We will open the floor now for some questions.
I have a comment, by the way. It just struck me while I was just thinking while I was listening to the really interesting presentations by Shaza and Mona. It's the main, in my view, the main source of the contradiction that we're living is that we are trying to treat the Syrian regime as if it belongs to the 21st century. It is actually a medieval regime. We are using 21st century tools to deal with a medieval regime. We talk about international humanitarian law, we talk about international justice. These things, these concepts do not exist in the minds of these people. They believe with a bludgeon. They believe in the bludgeon. They believe in the stick. They believe in killing. So I think this is the paradox that we are living. And we are at a loss. We don't know how to really deal with this type of regime without going down to their level, becoming like them. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Sorry, it's not wireless actually.
And it's okay. It's really sad story to hear. So that's all I'm trying to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a question about we all have seen how the Syrian regime is implementing all the trials as they are real trials, but we have heard that they are not, and people are signed on things that they haven't said or did. If there is an investigation in the future and the investigators have seen all these papers which looks real and people say things and sign, can we stand for the regime to defend himself that people did a crime and they are punished for their crimes?
Okay, so the idea is when we accuse the regime of, let's say hypothetically, the regime is in front of an international court and is being questioned with regard to this case. Is the regime duty to prove that they had fair trials and they had and that they weren't tortured and they actually died because of heart attacks? So it's not our duty to provide the evidence that these people were tortured or these people were forcibly disappeared or anything. Is there so when the regime uses the law, the terrorism law, or the law number 19, I think, and the law that created the court, the terrorism court, under international, I'm just talking about international law, not talking about Syrian law. Under international law, these laws are not legitimate. So they can't. So the regime cannot say that just because the regime said that these are terrorists and they used the argument based on the Syrian law, that's not valid under international law. For example, when talking about the rights of fair trials, or let's say, okay, so when we talk about when people are detained in Syria, there are specific procedures that the regime has to follow. Under the Syrian law, these procedures are legitimate, which is like they can be detained for I don't know how long, or they don't have to notify their families, or any other policies or practices that the regime is doing. Under international law, this is illegal.
Can I just ask a
Yes.
question? Who's, we keep seeing people going back to Syria from, is it Lebanon, Jordan? Who's overseeing this to make sure that the people are happy to go back? Because from the people I've met, because I spend a lot of time in Athens with a lot of families, and I know quite a lot of people that have come from Syria, and that isn't what people are wanting.
بدك تحكي شيء عن لبنان؟ انه اللاجئين بده يرجعوا من لبنان؟ Amina was in Lebanon before coming here, so she can answer this question.
أنا كنت عايشة بلبنان لمدة 4 سنوات. أنا وصلت لهون من 6 أشهر فقط. أحد أسباب قدومي لبريطانيا كلاجئة، رغم أنه أنا أجيت لبريطانيا قبل هالمرة زيارة، لكن ولا مرة كنت أفكر باللجوء. كنت أفكر دائما حيسقط النظام وأنا حأرجع على سوريا. لكن أحد أسباب قدومي هو أنه بلشت في لبنان في ضغط حكومي على كل السوريين الموجودين ليرجعوا لسوريا. يعني مثلا في إغلاق المستوصفات السورية، في تضييق على التعليم، تضييق على أي شيء، إقامة ما في للسوري، وبالتالي ما أمامه خيار إلا أنه يرجع لتحت حضن النظام.
Amina lived for 4 years in Lebanon, and she only came here 6 months ago, and she has been previously to the UK, but she never thought of staying here until recently, because recently there has been governmental pressure in Lebanon against the Syrian refugees. It's not anyone else, it's the government who is pressuring the Syrian refugees to go back through various means, like shutting down hospitals that are specially used by the Syrian people, Syrian refugees. Syrian refugees in Lebanon cannot use just any hospital. They have special hospitals that they can use. The same thing applies to education for their children. They're being pressured. They're not allowing their children to go to schools. The same thing applies for renewing their visas. So there's government pressure on these refugees to go back to Syria.
بس مثال أخير، مثلا المخيمات بلبنان هلا مشان سكان المخيمات يلزموا بالرجوع في حالتين: إما عم يجبروا على إخلاء المخيم لأنه صاحب الأرض بده يعمر فيها، وهذا ادعاء هي الحكومة اللبنانية عم تعمل هذا الضغط كونه حزب الله هو المسيطر. الحالة الثانية واللي تكررت بالصيف 6 مرات فقط بمنطقة البقاع، يلي هو يتم فجأة حريق بالمخيم. طبعا هن بيقولوا الحريق صدفة، بس هو الحريق مفتعل مبين لأنه تنحرق حوالي 150 خيمة بسكانهم فجأة، وما بيجي الإطفاء لبعد ما ينتهي الحريق ويروح ضحايا. فساعتها السكان ما أمامهم إلا يرجعوا لتحت نظام الأسد. هو سعي من الحكومة اللبنانية لإعادة تعويم نظام الأسد بأنه الناس عم ترجع.
There's another more sinister way that the government in Lebanon is using against the Syrian refugees, is that focusing on their camps, their tents. So, for example, the owners of the land where these camps are being built claim that they won't use it for building, and they evacuate the people. But a more sinister, a vicious way is that these camps are simply burned down. It happened 6 times recently in the Biqa' area of Lebanon, that by what they claim to be an accident, fire sets out in these tents, and a big number of tents are burned down before the fire services arrive. They usually arrive too late after all the people burned inside their tents.
We still have time for maybe 3 questions.
I've got a comment actually to أخت آمنة. أخت آمنة فقدت 3 من أخوتها، سجن جوزها، وكذلك أخ لها كمان سجن فترة من الزمن والخير. يعني حقيقة العزيمة اللي عندها والصبر والإيمان بقضيتها بيشحن معنوياتنا جميعا، فأنا بحييها على هالعزيمة اللي عندها. وحقيقة يعني شيء مشرف أنه نجتمع فيك ونسمع منك ونشوف العزيمة اللي عندك بحيث تشحن هممنا نحن خارج البلد.
The brother here wanted to express his admiration to Amina, her strong willpower and her determination to continue despite going through an experience that would turn any human being into a devastated person. He is just expressing admiration, and he's saying it's an honor to be in the same room with you, and we take inspiration from your power and determination.
The courage she's got, the willpower, the faith is unbelievable. I really salute you.
Thank you.
بس أنا بدي أقول كلمة صغيرة. الحقيقة وقت وصل خبر أخواتي اللي هن صار رقمهم 3 بالشهادة، قلت له لهيثم وقتها، رغم كل الألم وكل التضحيات اللي أنا مريت فيها على مستوى العائلة أو على مستوى سوريا وبلد وغيره، بس ولا لحظة ولا دقيقة ولا شعرة اهتز إيماني بعدالة القضية السورية وبعدالة ثورتنا وأنه هي ثورة حق ضد هذا النظام المجرم وبدها تستمر. ولا ساعة اهتز إيماني رغم كل هالتضحيات، وحتى لو اليوم فقدت أولادي وفقدت زوجي فالثورة قضية حق لا محالة حتى لو العالم كله ما سمعنا.
إن شاء الله منصورين. إن شاء الله.
Amina said that despite losing my three brothers and going through all these trials, what kept me going on is my unshaken belief in the justice of our cause, in the justice that of the need of the Syrian people to be liberated from the Assad regime. And even now, if I lose my husband and every last one of my children, I will never lose faith in our cause, in our right to be free people.
Yes. Yes, please. The lady.
What is the government doing here to protect all the people, not just in Syria, but in Iraq, and also in Libya at the moment? I just feel outraged by the bread that's down, and I have a lot of friends in Iraq. I've been to Syria for many years, and I really was Syria, and I'm doing my time now. It's so brazen, so bad.
Yeah.
And what the UK government is doing? Okay. Yeah, I mean, the UK government is really not doing enough. Even with regard to the numbers of refugees they pledged to accept. But talking on from like international law perspective, they're also not doing a lot. They should be putting more pressure on whoever they have access to. They even there was a case of British Syrian doctor who was detained in Syria, and he died under torture. The UK government did not do anything. So they didn't do anything to help even their own citizens. So I mean, they're not doing it. They're not doing anything. I mean, they're not doing enough.
Politically,
I
polite.
Yeah, it's mostly paid lip service when it comes to issues pertaining to international justice, but no real action. I mean, has been taken. No real pressure, even on Russia, on any governments that should, where pressure should be applied. Nothing has been done really. And you mentioned one doctor, and there's currently another doctor. His name is Hamid. Yes. Who is still, his whereabouts are unknown. He was abducted in 2012 from Yarmouk camp, where he was practicing as a doctor. He's a dual citizen, and he had honors from the UK government in terms of the position that he reached and whatnot. And still, there has been no real investigation into his matter. So that's another example of UK negligence towards its own citizens that are both Syrian and British.
The gentleman, yes, please. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So I was just going to say, I mean, it's very hard hearing all these things. I mean, Amina, she said it's an honour that she and her family participated in the Syrian revolution, and I think it's very heartening to hear those words, and for people to go and give bottles of water and roses to soldiers, or attempt to give them, and risk death, and not just risk death, but actually die. It's astounding. But I mean, I suppose what I find frustrating, and I will eventually turn it into a question, but is someone said this is the most well-documented crimes against humanity in recent years, and possibly the most well-documented ever, because there's so much evidence. And yet in this society, there's almost complete silence, really. I mean, like 15 years ago, something like up to 1 million people demonstrated against the war against Iraq, but where's the hundreds of thousands? Where's the hundreds? Well, maybe there's a few hundred people now and again, aren't there, who demonstrate? But it just so, you know, in Syria and other countries, if you go on a demonstration, you risk your life, you get shot dead. Here, nothing will happen. Maybe you'll get arrested at the worst, and maybe beaten up at the worst. But people aren't doing anything, and I guess that's a bit of an expression of anguish and what can we do. But I suppose the question is, what is the most important thing that people in Britain can do? I mean, I'm almost thinking like, okay, for example, something like 2.5 million people in Idlib are now being threatened by Russian bombardment. And okay, if we go out on a demonstration to, I think there's some kind of Russian visa centre in Manchester, I believe. Okay, it'd just be symbolic, but I mean, is that worth doing? Or okay, it's a bit of an incorrect question, but what should we do? What can we do to help?
I think Haysam should answer because it's more. I mean, yourself first.
If you want to go first.
I tend to think that people should advocate very strategically on like a very specific platform for what they want, and to their MPs basically, not just demonstration, but go as a group, as a lobby, and pressure your MPs to make A, B, C commitments to you. And if they don't vote for them again. I mean, they're responsible to upholding what you want. You're their constituents. That they have to respect the wishes of their constituents. And if you do it in a group of people, and I mean, just as like the people in the solidarity campaigns for Palestine have been doing for years. We want this. We want a real boycott when it comes to Syria, to the Syrian government. The same thing needs to apply in the Syrian cause.
ياسمين تحبي تحكي شيء؟ تفضلي.
Yes, two things actually in comment of two of the questions. The one about the Syrian law and the fact that I'm not a legal person, but I've been working on human rights issues for some time, and we worked recently on the question basically about this Syrian regime, so much knowing what it's doing and having procedures for every crime it makes and documenting it very well. That's true, but that's also, as I'm not sure which speaker mentioned, when you go into the legal details, some of those laws in their very wording are inconsistent with international law, are very ambiguous, and leave a lot of room for the discretion of the judge, basically. And the judge is only a tool in the hand of the security apparatus. And that's not too hard to tell. Basically, what I wanted to ask Mr. who asked this question is to refer him to a recent document that we worked on jointly with a number of organizations to sort of find exactly this sort of arguments. How can we, because yes, the regime is building sometimes in what otherwise on a surface look would look like a very solid case for it having a very consolidated legal procedure, but at a closer look, it's not so easy to refute. So our document is called Before It's Too Late. Unfortunately, it's a bitter irony. It was published around the time the civil report status of people who passed away was changed. Sima in the room from Ornamo was a partner in this. She could probably shed more light on some of the details. It has been published on our website. It's both sort of a study that gives background about all the details of detention in Syria, plus a policy paper which details many of the detailed recommendations that we collectively think governments need to use, particularly in the political track, to move forward with the issue of detention in Syria. Having said that, it's a living document that's going to be updated and upgraded as we go. The other question about what we can do, I thank you for that question, and I thank you for the urge you feel for doing something. I've been in the UK, but not being as a UK British citizen, I won't be the best to advise on that, but you know best the tools to put pressure on the governments, because as things stand right now, the UK, the US, all of the free world states have left the steering wheel for Iran and Russia, particularly, in every other file as well, but now in the issue of detainees. So the most recent statement coming out of the Astana process where the lead is totally almost Russian, talks about a pilot project that they are willing to engage in with regards to detainees. And we Syrians know nothing about what that pilot project it means or is. And it's one of the most ironic and you know, a very bad wording of a diplomatic statement to talk about such a very sensitive issue. But they don't feel the urge to choose their words. They don't feel the urge to let us know what they're planning. They don't feel the urge to do actually something about it because they have the steering wheel. So the governments of the free world, the government of the UK as well as others, should put more pressure on Russia, Iran, and other allies of the regime to feel that it is imperative to do something, not leave everything for their initiative. We cannot be at the waiting end of whatever Russia and Iran want or are willing to offer us. Now, the tools for doing that, maybe letters to MPs, maybe, well, you would know better, but yes, the idea is in Syria now, the steering wheel is left to someone else, an ally of the regime, basically, Iran and Russia. We cannot continue this way.
Thank you, Yasmin.
Quick comment. I don't know what was the benefit from this international courts and international justice system, which I feel just it is worthless. It do nothing. Just now we are waiting. The people in Egypt, just 3 million people, just waiting to be killed. And after that, we go to the courts, international courts. They are like the free world, free countries. Let's say European countries, USA, these countries. Just they leave the criminals to do crimes, and after that, we ask few people to go to the court. If they ask these people, just I feel like waste of time, waste of energy. I believe we have to do something else. They will leave us to die. They will never take the criminals to the courts. I'm sure about this.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I have just a few 1 minute to have an answer for this question, which is in the mind of all Syrians, I think. So I'm really sorry because it's 9:15 now.
Okay. I mean, I completely agree with you. I'm not going to defend international law because it did fail us. International law failed us. International community failed us. But unfortunately, I mean, we have very limited tools to use against one of the ruthless regimes ever existed in the history. So we have to use it. They are using it. The regime is using international law against us. When they do justify their doings using international law, so we have to use it. We have to use it as well. It's the only tool we have until there comes a day where we can develop something else. But I completely agree with you. It did fail us miserably.
And another thing, processes of transitional justice are never easy, and they're never short. They're long, they're messy, and they're hard. And like victims wait 20 plus years to get something. Sometimes it's even symbolic. So no one is saying it's an easy process. And sadly for us, the political landscape as it is right now is very pessimistic. I mean, it's not something, we don't have governments in power in the free world that are very, that seem to do things consistent with international law or human rights law themselves. So why would they want to hold another government accountable somewhere else? But maybe 20 years down the line, the political landscape will look very different. Maybe it'll be more optimistic. And it would be a great thing to know that we had done something throughout this time. We had done all the evidence gathering. We had constructed the cases in case the powers that be become great ones again.
And just one last thing, like in Serbia, there was a war crime. I know that you're shaking your head. I agree. I completely agree. Justice took a really long time to be served, but it was served at the end. And when you hear in partially served, of course, but when you hear testimonies from families, they did feel that justice was served. Yes, it's not what we want, but it's the system we live in, and we need to use the limited tools we have, like 40 years and 15 years, and what was his name? Taylor. I forgot, Charles Taylor. He was on the run, and then he was caught at the end and brought to justice.
And at the time, the very beginning, no one thought he'd be ever found.
Yeah,
But he was.
Yeah. So it's, but I know the frustration. We all share it.
Thank you very much. Mustafa.
Very briefly, we think Rebuild Society is probably one of the most active and most influential Syrian group in Europe, and we are a charity. People can just follow what we're doing and support us. We have drafted letters for you just to sign and send to your MP. So we do a lot of the work for people just to click and send an email to their MPs, to prime ministers and things like that. Haytham and the guys in Rethink Rebuild Society have brought Caesar to the Parliament, was it a couple of years ago, to actually present his case to the British government. We are a charity as well, and we live on donations from people, so that's something else that you can help us with.
Thank you, Mustafa. I should have left you before.
I'm sorry, I've just got to pick up on this, Jen.
Okay.
It's really urgent now, though, what's happening in Italy. I mean, because I know people who got out of Syria, and sorry, I have a speech problem. So I know people whose families are there in Italy now who are like, you know, they're really worrying. But why can't something be done before? It's like the lady on the end, she said in 10 years this will be, well, we can't wait 10 years. Something urgent needs to happen. This is why I'm asking about the UN. Yeah. Why can't they not go in? I know British soldiers, because of the work I do here, and they're saying we need to go in as UN peacekeepers. Like they are in Cyprus, you've got the British Army stationed, they put the blue beret on and become peacekeepers in Cyprus. Why can't they? They want to go to Syria. A lot of British soldiers want to go to Syria to try and do something there.
Thank you.
So why can't something be done?
This is politics in this world.
We share
Okay.
the same question.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. Before I finish, I would like to thank Seema. Maybe those who received my first email, Seema was as a speaker in that email, and for logistical reasons, we had an alternative. From Amina.
Yes,
Okay, just.
All right. Amina asks all of you to keep the water bottle and the rose somewhere where people can see it. So when they come to your homes and they ask, "What's that?" you'll be able to tell her story. So,
Yeah, we have some spares. We have some spares.
So, yeah.
That's okay.
This is Amina's report.
Okay, thank you very much for coming tonight, and see you soon.